Has Swamiji realized the self? Yes, but this is sometimes a strange question to answer. It is like having somebody ask you if you have become a human being. You are always a human being. You didn't have to do anything to accomplish it. You're self-evidently a human being. So much so it is strange to field questions about it. It is not self-evident to me. Then find out who you are. How does one find out who one is? You will find out by constantly doing self-inquiry. Ask yourself, am I the body? Am I the mind? When self-inquiry is deepened, you understand who you are. How long did it take for Swamiji to find out? If one is mature, one can realize it in this moment. If one is not mature, one has to take up sadhana to make oneself receptive to the truth. Which category were you in? I served Bhagavan for more than 12 years. After that, I came to this place because I wanted to be more established in the self. After several years of sadhana, I realized the self. Is Swamiji totally established in the self? Yes. What happens in your deep sleep state? Is it the same as when you awake? Yes. I have heard that when people came close to Ramana Maharshi, they could feel a penetrating peace. As I sit here in the presence of Swamiji, I feel nothing. Why is this? Not everyone felt peace in Bhagavan's presence. Madhava Swami served Bhagavan as his personal attendant for many years, but he claimed he felt no peace there. He used to have the same complaint as you. In his later days, he would say, people are saying that whenever they are in the presence of Bhagavan, they feel tremendous peace. But when I go inside Bhagavan's hall, it is like hell for me. I am telling you this because the answer to your question is whether you feel peace or not in a jnani's presence depends on your maturity. People who are mature are sensitive to the jnani's presence. Such people will immediately experience peace when they come into the presence of a jnani. Others have to wait. Buds that are ready to bloom open when the sun's rays fall on them. Those that are not ready have to wait. In other words, is it because of my immaturity that I am not able to feel peace in the presence of Swamiji? Don't make this kind of judgment about yourself. Don't think that you are not mature. If you hold on to this kind of thought, this will be a hindrance to your realization, because the truth is already within you. But Swamiji just said that if a person were mature, he would be able to feel peace in the presence of a realized soul. Maturity and immaturity belong to the mind. You are not the mind. You are already the self. Are there differences in the degrees of realization of the self? For example, Ramana was widely acclaimed as a Sadguru. Is your understanding the same as Ramana's? You see a big lamp before you. Your own lamp is unlit. So you bring your lamp to the lamp which is already burning. And when you go away from that lamp, you have your own lamp, your own light. Wherever you go from that point on, the light is within you. The state of jnana is the same for all. Anyone who realizes the self is in the same state of peace, which is beyond the mind. Though the experience of the self is the same in all cases, it is true that some jnanis end up helping a lot of people, whereas others who are equally enlightened may help fewer people. Some jnanis do not teach at all. They live ordinary lives and are rarely, if ever, recognized for what they really are. Water can be in a well or it can be in a lake. It is the same water. But one source can quench more thirst than the other. A small lamp can light up a room, whereas a big one can light up a whole street. Bhagavan was one of those big blazing lights that could light up a huge area. He guided and brought light to many people. Swamiji is saying that some jnanis are big lamps and that others are small. Do the small lamps become bigger, or do they always remain the same? Whichever light you go to, the light is always the same. This business of the lamps is just an example. What I am trying to say is only a few people have the capacity to guide a large number of people towards the truth. Realizing the truth is one thing, but guiding others towards it is something else. All jnanis are not equally capable when it comes to guiding others. But my question was, do the little lamps become big lamps, or are they always destined to be little? A devotee of Annamalai Swami, who was clearly irritated by this line of questioning, then interrupted and asked, "Why are you repeating the question? Have you just come here to test Swamiji's state?" This kind of questioning will not help you to realize the self. Questions such as these will disappear if you have a strong desire for realization. Your mind will then not be occupied with such thoughts. You can ask me many questions and I can give you any number of answers. We could go on like this for hours, but neither your questions nor my answers would give you any kind of contentment. Having such questions in your mind will not lead you to an experience of the self. I would advise you to question yourself. Who is asking the question and who is getting the answer? If you have this attitude towards your doubts and your questions, your quest for their source will lead you back to the self. In that place, there are no questions and no answers. There is only peace. I want to ask one last question. What is the significance of Arunachala? Last night was full moon, so many people were round the hill. I also went. It is not an ordinary hill. It is not like other hills in the world. It is a spiritual hill. Those who associate with it feel a magnetic pull towards the self. Though it is in the form of a hill, it has the full energy of the self. Seekers who come to this place with the intention of realizing the self can be much benefited by going round the hill. Walking round the hill can help you a lot with your sadhana. There is water everywhere under the ground, but there are some places where it is easier to get at. Likewise, the self is everywhere. There is no place that is without it. But it is also true that there are certain places, certain people, around which and around whom the presence of the self can be easily felt. In the proximity of this hill, the presence of the self is more powerful and more self-evident than anywhere else. However, the great glory of this hill cannot be explained in words. One has to experience it for oneself. We often say, "I slept happily." But if someone asks you to explain in words the happiness you felt in that state, what can you say? You can experience it, but you can't really explain it. This is how the self is. You can experience it, you can become it, but you cannot explain this state through words. The same thing can be said about this hill. You can experience it, but you can't explain it in a satisfactory way. In Indian mythology, we have a wish-fulfilling tree. If you find this tree and tell it what you want, your wish will be granted. Arunachala also has this reputation. That is why so many people come here on a full moon night and walk around it. But very few people come here and ask for enlightenment, for undisturbed peace. All beings are ultimately searching for undisturbed peace. But who asks for it here? If you are ready to receive peace, Arunachala can give it to you. This peace is already within us, but people don't appreciate this, so they go looking for it all over the place in external locations. Is it faith in Arunachala that produces results, or is there some inherent power here that is independent of my belief in it? You can say that Arunachala is a light. It shines whether you believe in it or not. If you go near a lamp, it will shine on you whether you believe in it or not. Arunachala is the light of the self, and the light of the self will continue to shine even if you refuse to believe that it is there. Is Arunachala the only place that is like this, or are there other places? I have heard that there are powerful places in the Himalayas. Bhagavan himself said that Arunachala is greater than all other religious places. There are holy, powerful places in the world, but none has the power of Arunachala. Bhagavan has written about this in his verses. There is a huge amount of Shakti, spiritual energy here. We can take as much as we want, but no matter how much we take, the original amount is never diminished. It is an inexhaustible source. Even before Bhagavan came and lived here, there were innumerable sages who had discovered the power of Arunachala for themselves. Many came here, realized the self, and attributed their realization to the power and grace of this mountain. Bhagavan has praised this mountain in his poetry, and other sages have talked about the spiritual greatness of Arunachala in their verses and in their other teachings. Though others have praised the mountain, they did not succeed as well as Bhagavan in making Arunachala and its power famous all over the world. Bhagavan has revealed the secret of Arunachala, which is why so many foreigners now come here. Bhagavan always maintained that the power of this mountain was not a matter of belief. He said that if you sit in the shade of a tree, you will feel the cool shade. This is a physical fact, not a matter of belief. Then he went on to say that Arunachala worked in the same way. It affects the people who are here, whether they believe in it or not. He once said, Arunachala is like a fire. If you go near it, you will feel the heat whether you believe in it or not. I also heard him say once, if you go round this hill, it will give you its grace, even if you don't want it. I read somewhere that Bhagavan said that the jnanis have the power to link the individual mind to the Supreme Self. Yes, a big ship can carry many people to the other side of the ocean, and a small ship can carry only a few people. And some jnanis don't carry anyone at all. These jnanis who don't have disciples don't appear to be helping anyone, but their power, the power of realization, is having a beneficial effect on all beings. It is true, though, that some jnanis pass away without teaching anyone directly. Lakshmi, the cow, and Bhagavan's mother are examples of this. Bhagavan once said that one jnani living on this earth is a tremendous help to all people. Yes. I want to ask Swamiji about his own experience. Was his own experience a single event, an explosion of knowledge, or did it happen more gradually in a more subtle way? It was my experience that through continuous sadhana, I gradually relaxed into the self. It was a gradual process. So it is not necessarily something that happens with a big bang. It is not something new that suddenly comes. It is eternally there, but it is covered by so much. It has to be rediscovered. But do some people explode into that? I was with a man this morning who claims to be realized. He came here. Do you remember him? He said he had an experience of exploding into it, and that the experience of the self, he says, stayed with him ever since 1982. If he says, I don't know myself, or if he claims I have known myself, both are statements to laugh at, because you are that. You can be that, but there is nothing to say about it. If somebody says, I am a jnani, I am an enlightened person, then who is claiming that? Yes, exactly, very good. Can I ask another question about my inquiry? I've been having small little glimpses, especially during sleep, of having no thoughts. There have been other glimpses in the most unlikely places. In Lucknow, which is a big, busy city with people yelling and screaming everywhere. I was cycling down a crowded street when I suddenly felt piece of the self that was underlying everything. I could feel the self, or at least it was an experience that I thought must have been the self. There was a stillness and a silence in the midst of these utterly chaotic conditions. At other times, the pendulum swings the other way, and I feel completely lost in my mental world and in the chaotic outside world. I feel a little confusion about the process and the technique of self-inquiry. So much so, I have to go back to reading Ramana's teachings on the subject again and again until the confusion leaves me. I would like Swami's comments on this. I know that there is nothing new that he can say about it. I know that I have to continue with self-inquiry. Constant meditation is the only way. If you bring the light into your room, the darkness immediately goes away. You have to see that the light is not put out. It has to be continuously burning so that there is no darkness, until you get firmly established in the self. You have to continue with your meditation. Doubts take possession of you only if you forget yourself. My doubts are not my only problem. I find that my yearning for the self is not very strong. This bothers me quite a lot. When you forget the state of being yourself, then is the time to inquire. Who forgets the self? Who is in doubt? Who is having the confusion? Inquire in this way. Discard all that is not you and come back to yourself. Sometimes I am overpowered by self-doubt. If the meditation is not continuous enough, the other part of the mind becomes predominant. You have to overpower this mind that is taking you away from yourself by repeatedly doing this self-inquiry. When you churn curd and separate butter and buttermilk, they will not become one again after they have been separated. If you take milk from the cow's udder, it will never go back into the cow again. In the same way, if you become established in the self, you will never go back into ignorance again. When I do have these self-doubts, the yearning or desire to know myself does come up quite strongly, but at other times it is not there so strongly. What do you think about this? Whatever may be happening, inquire. To whom is all this happening? Do this and go back to yourself, which is peace. I thought that this yearning was a plus point in my favor. Isn't it a help to have this yearning? If the intensity to know yourself is strong enough, the intensity of your yearning will take you to the self. But still, I must keep up the inquiry. If you remain in the self, inquiry will not be necessary. If you move away from the self and go back to the mind, you then have to inquire again and go back to yourself. To whom does this intensity to realize the self arise? It has to arise to the I that ultimately has to disappear. Who is this I? It is neither the body nor the mind. If you remain as the self, there is neither body nor mind. So what is this I? Inquire into it and find out for yourself. When you see the rope, what happens to the snake? Nothing happens to it because there never was a snake. Similarly, when you remain as the self, there is a knowing that this I never had any existence. All is the self. You are not separate from the self. All is you. Your real state is the self, and in that self there is no body and no mind. This is the truth, and you know it by being it. This I am the body idea is wrong. This false idea must go, and the conviction, I am the self, should come to the extent that it becomes constant. At the moment, this I am the body idea seems very natural to you. You should work towards the point where I am the self becomes natural to you. It happens when the wrong idea of being the body goes, and when you stop believing it to be true. It vanishes as darkness vanishes when the sun appears. This life is all a dream within a dream within a dream. We dream this world. We dream that we die and take birth in another body. And in this birth we dream that we have dreams. All kinds of pleasures and suffering alternate in these dreams. But a moment comes when waking up happens. In this moment, which we call realizing the self, there is the understanding that all the births, all the deaths, all the sufferings, and all the pleasures were unreal dreams that have finally come to an end. Everyone has experienced dreams within dreams. One may dream that one has woken from a dream, but that waking up is still happening within a dream. Our whole lives are dreams. When this dream life ends and a new one begins, there is no knowledge that both dreams are happening in the underlying dream of samsara. Bhagavan has instructed us in Who Am I? To see the whole world as a dream. When realization comes, nothing will affect you because you will have the firm knowledge that all manifestation is an unreal dream. When I was in Germany, I used to meditate in front of Bhagavan's picture and feel very peaceful. One day, while I was sitting as usual in front of Bhagavan's picture, a light started emerging from the eyes of Bhagavan. It flowed out of the photo and embraced me. Soon afterwards, I went into a peaceful, blissful, timeless state that I have never experienced before. I totally forgot about my body, time, and my surroundings. There was only peace and consciousness. That experience made such a deep impression on me, it created a strong yearning in me to regain the experience. But I never got it back. No matter how much I try, I never feel that I am getting any closer to it. How can I get this experience back? By constant self-inquiry. Who had the experience and who lost it? Who has the yearning to regain it? Who has all these thoughts about it? If you follow this approach, you will ultimately realize who you really are. The experience you had didn't come from somewhere else. It is already within you. Find out who had the experience. In order to do self-inquiry, we have to use the mind, which is most troublesome and in reality does not even exist. Why is this? The mind that we use for self-inquiry is the pure mind, the sattvic mind. By using this sattvic mind, we do self-inquiry to remove the impure mind, which is rajas and tamas. If you keep on doing self-inquiry with the sattvic mind, ultimately this sattvic mind will be dissolved in the self. Some time ago, I felt very depressed and couldn't get out of this state. One day, while I was doing Giri Pradakshina, which I do every day, I stopped on Bhagavan's bridge, the parapet wall of a culvert about 4 miles from Rama Ashram, and started meditating on Arunachala with closed eyes. Suddenly the depression lifted and was replaced by peace. This depression has not returned. The one who had the depression was not you. Your real nature is peace. Don't identify yourself with either the mind or with the depressed states it produces. These are not you. After this depression left me, I found that I was always in a peaceful state. Soon afterwards, I met an Indian girl and fell in love with her. Sometimes the thought arises that I would like to marry this girl. Is it advisable to get married? Would it not be a hindrance to my sadhana? Is this girl spiritually oriented? Yes, she often goes to temples and reads spiritual books. If the partner has progressed spiritually to the same extent that you have, it would be a great help. But if one partner is less interested in spiritual matters than the other, the one who has less interest will drag the other down, unless the more interested partner is spiritually very powerful. And in such case, there would always be quarrels and tension. If both partners have the same spiritual yearnings to realize the self, married life is okay. Otherwise, it is a hindrance. How can we keep our sadhana in the middle of all our daily activities? It is very difficult. Ramakrishna was once asked this question, and in reply he gave the example of a child who was playing by spinning round and round. If you do this, you will soon get dizzy and fall over. But if the same child spins round and round while holding firmly onto a post at arm's length, the child's grip on the post will keep him upright and prevent him from falling over. In this dizzy, spinning world of samsara, if you hold on to the post of the self, you will be able to stay upright and not fall over. I can give you another example. When you cut jackfruits open with your bare hands, there is an unpleasant, milky liquid inside that sticks to your fingers and makes it very hard to take out the fruit. And afterwards it takes hours to scrub it all off. However, if you put a little oil on your fingers before you start the work, this milky liquid will not bother you, because it cannot stick to your oiled hands. Without some protection, contact with worldly matters can prove to be sticky and unpleasant. But if you oil yourself with remembrance of the self, you can move smoothly and efficiently through the world without having any of your business affairs stick to you or cause you any trouble or inconvenience. When there is remembrance of the self, everything in life proceeds smoothly, and there is no attachment to the work that is being done. While you were doing a lot of work in the ashram, how did you manage to keep up your sadhana? In those days, Bhagavan was accessible for most of the time, so I was able to get regular guidance in my sadhana. He told me to read Sivananda Lahari, Elam Ondre, Upadesa Saram, and his other writings. He also told me to do parayana, chanting of spiritual works. All this was very helpful in keeping my mind on the self during work. Sri Bhagavan often said, "While doing work, don't have the idea I am doing work." If you can keep up this attitude, work will not be a burden, and no problems will touch you. Don't differentiate between work and meditation. If you don't differentiate, every job you do becomes meditation. And don't make distinctions between different kinds of work. Don't think this is good work, that is bad work. If you treat all work equally, any work you do will be beneficial for your sadhana. We have to live in the world and deal with people, many of whom will try to take advantage of us. Being quiet and detached is one thing, but should we be so quiet and uninterested that we allow other people to take advantage of our passivity? You can be quiet within and be tough on the outside, if that is the role you have to play in the world. There's a story about a snake that lived under a bush by the side of the street. Whenever people passed the bush, the snake made a lot of noise and tried to bite them. It gave a lot of trouble to anyone who came near. One day a passing sadhu passed the bush, and the snake, as usual, put on an aggressive show of behavior. The sadhu, who could communicate with animals, said, "Keep quiet and don't bite people. You don't have to behave like this. Live a peaceful life and don't trouble the people who walk past." The snake heeded the advice, and from that day on its behavior completely changed. It sat quietly under its bush and never troubled any of the people who walked past. Within a few days, the local people realized that the snake was no longer a threat to them, but instead of being relieved, they would throw stones at the snake or try to chase it away. People have this instinctive response to snakes. Whenever they see one, they feel compelled to commit some act of violence against it. The snake ignored the provocation for a while, but it soon realized that this new state of affairs was not an improvement on the previous one. A few days later, the sadhu came by and asked how the snake's new lifestyle was going. "Not so good," responded the snake. "I am suffering a lot on account of your advice. I am being very calm and I am not giving any trouble to anyone. But because of my calmness and sadhu-like behavior, people are taking advantage of me by throwing stones at me and harassing me. They would never do this before because they knew I might retaliate and bite them." The sadhu thought about this for some time and then spoke. "I advised you to be calm and not trouble anyone. But that doesn't mean that you have to sit here passively while people come along and hurt you. When people come to cause you trouble in the future, just pretend that you are going to bite them. You can be angry on the outside, but on the inside, you can still be calm." From then on, the snake adapted the new tactic of hissing at everyone who came past his bush, just to let them know that he was still a potential threat. This was enough to make people give him a wide berth. We can all be like this if circumstances demand it. There are occasions when a show of anger is needed. We can play the role of being angry, but at the same time we can know that we are just acting out a role that is needed at a particular moment. Internally, we can be peaceful while all this is going on. Jnanis usually come to their last births with a mountain of punyas on account of what they have done in their previous lives. The jnani cannot experience all these punyas himself, but those who come in contact with him can receive them as blessings. The same thing can be said for all the pampams that the jnani brings to his final life. A poor man can suddenly become rich if a millionaire takes a liking to him and gives him a lot of money. Those who come to a jnani and do selfless service to him find themselves becoming spiritual millionaires when they receive the jnani's unused punyas. Those who come to abuse and insult the jnani end up receiving all his unused papams. This is an automatic process. The jnani does not pick and choose the people who are going to be the recipients of these punyas. This transfer happens automatically. Devotees grow spiritually by receiving all these blessings. They reach heights that would be difficult or impossible to reach through their own efforts. My own life illustrates this. When I was very young, I stayed alone doing all kinds of spiritual practice by myself. I doubt that I could have experienced the truth of the self through my own efforts. Fortunately, grace brought me to Bhagavan, and through Bhagavan's grace, I had the opportunity to serve him. My proximity to Bhagavan and the work I did for him made me ready for this truth. I learned this lesson about the necessity of being in the jnani's presence early on in my time at Ramana ashram. After a few weeks there, I found myself disappointed by the attitude of many of the people I found around Bhagavan. They seemed to be more interested in gossiping than in doing meditation. I knew that Bhagavan was a great man. but I didn't feel comfortable living with people whom I thought were not taking the spiritual life very seriously. I decided to leave the ashram and meditate by myself. My attempt to run away was not successful. Bhagavan's grace and power brought me back from Polur, the place I had run away to. As I sat in front of Bhagavan on my first day back, Bhagavan looked at me, and while he was looking, I began to hear the words of one of the verses from the Uladu Narpadu Anubandham resonating in my heart. The supreme state, which is praised and which is attained here in this life by clear inquiry, which rises in the heart when association with the sadhu is gained, is impossible to attain by listening to preachers, by studying and learning the meaning of the scriptures, by virtuous deeds, or by any other means. I had never read this work before, so I don't know how these words managed to repeat themselves inside me. No one else heard them except me. The verse praises association with a jnani, saying that that association with such a being is far more productive for sadhaks than doing spiritual practice by oneself. After hearing these words, I got the courage to stay on at Rama Asranam and serve Bhagavan. You said that by serving a jnani, one could receive his unused punyas as a blessing. Does one not need a lot of punyas of one's own merely to have the opportunity to meet a jnani and serve him? It's not just a question of good luck. Yes, one of our saints has written a verse to this effect. Those who have accumulated punyas in many lives, those who have purified their minds to some extent, those who have made a big spiritual effort over many lives, these kinds of virtuous souls will get association with a realized guru, and by his grace, they will come to realize the truth. If you want to get hot, you have to go near a fire. If you want water, you have to go to a well. And if you want grace to realize the self, you have to go to a jnani. Bhagavan would occasionally quote a verse from Kaivalya Navanita that says, "The immemorial Vedas declare that single-minded devotion to a holy sage is not only pleasing to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva together, but also secures the rewards of all the Vedic rites, and finally, liberation from the cycle of births." After my first attempt to run away, I never left Bhagavan again. I never went anywhere else to do my spiritual practices. I just listened to what my guru told me, and I carried out his instructions to the best of my ability. Then, one day in the hall, Bhagavan turned to me and said, "Your karmas are over." I had this great opportunity to surrender to a guru like Bhagavan, to trust him, and to serve him. It didn't happen through my own efforts. This kind of thing happens very rarely, for beings such as Bhagavan don't appear very often. If you want to learn, you have to go to a school. If you want jnana, you have to go to a jnani. I want to speak some more about the grace of the guru. Bhagavan told me that the guru is the self who is within. The self manifests in a form and pushes the minds of the devotees towards the self. At the same time, the guru resides within us as the unmanifest self. From the inside, he is pulling us towards him. This pushing and pulling is the guru's grace. For the guru's grace to work on us, we have to surrender. We have to give up all the things of this world and all other worlds and direct our attention towards the self. If we want anything in this world or the next, our energy will be dispersed in these desires, and to fulfill these desires, we shall have to be reborn again and again. I once told Bhagavan that I had a desire to go and live in a cave where I could do meditation by myself. Bhagavan told me, If you keep a desire like that in your mind, you will have to take one more birth. Why keep such a desire? If it is destined for you, it will happen by itself. Leave this idea alone. So give up all your desires, your likes, dislikes, and preferences. If you are truly the whole, which part of yourself will you like or dislike? To strengthen my resolve, Bhagavan would sometimes tell me inspiring stories of service and devotion from the lives of other great teachers. He twice told me about Virupakshadeva and Guhe Namasivaya, two great beings who lived on Arunachala several centuries ago. These two served their guru in Karnataka very faithfully for many years. At the end of this period, the guru sent both of them to Arunachala and told them to meditate there. They came here and picked different spots for their tapas. Virupakshadeva sat in the cave that is now named after him, and Guhe Namasivaya picked a cave that was further down the hill. They both attained liberation after years of meditating here. Eventually, they attracted devotees of their own and started ashrams here. Perhaps Bhagavan told me this story because he knew that it was my destiny to be sent to meditate by myself after many years of service. If a disciple serves a guru, the guru does not gain anything from it, but the disciple, by his service, becomes purified and fit to receive the truth. A ship may be taking you to the other shore of the ocean, but the ship itself is not gaining anything from you. There is one more verse that I want to quote for you. It was sung by Manikavachagar, whose supreme devotion to Shiva enabled him to realize the self. Bhagavan often quoted Manikavachakar's poems to us. I gave myself to you. In return, you must give yourself to me. So in this business of giving and taking, who is the real winner? In our transactions, I received limitless ananda from you. But what did you get from me? Nothing. Just a useless ego. So now you are residing in my heart. What more do I need? I have become fulfilled. I need nothing because you are in my heart. Manikavachagar could sing like this because Shiva himself was residing within him as his own reality. His desires were fulfilled. He needed nothing. In the 1930s, I received a telegram stating that my father had passed away. I reported the fact to Bhagavan and asked, please give him moksha, liberation. Bhagavan nodded and said yes. Soon afterwards, Chinna Swami asked me to take a bath because in our Hindu tradition, when either our father or mother dies, we have to take a purificatory bath. I told Chinna Swami, my father has not died. Bhagavan is my father. He is still here. The man who has just died was the father in my last birth. My father in this birth is Bhagavan, my guru. I don't need to take a bath. There is another Hindu tradition surrounding death. If anyone dies in the family, we don't take food until the body has been disposed of. When Bhagavan's mother died at Skandashram, Bhagavan ignored this rule, saying, Mother is not dead, let us eat. In this case, there was no ritual pollution involved because his mother had realized the self in her final moments. In such circumstances, the usual rules on bathing and fasting do not apply. There were other Hindu dietary rules that Bhagavan sometimes ignored. When there is a solar or lunar eclipse, we are not supposed to cook or eat. On one such occasion, Bhagavan said, Come on, let us take our food as usual. We don't have to worry about this eclipse. Some of the Brahmins, who were more strict about obeying these sorts of rules, were afraid to break their lifetime habits. But the rest of us went with Bhagavan and ate our food with him. After Bhagavan's mother died in 1922, Bhagavan continued to live at Skanda Ashram for several months. Then one day he went down the hill to his mother's samadhi and stayed there. Some power, some Shakti, compelled him to go down the hill and abandon Skandashram. Soon afterwards, Skandashram was robbed, and the thieves took cooking pots and a few other things away. Up until then, some of the devotees had been staying at Skandashram to guard the place and the few things that were left there. But after this theft, it was more or less abandoned, and everyone moved down the hill and stayed there. Many people came to serve Bhagavan food there, and the items that were lost were soon replaced by donations from the visiting devotees. In the beginning, it was very primitive. Everyone, including Bhagavan, slept outside by a mango tree. The first building was a mud hut with a thatched roof that was erected over the site of Mother's Samadhi. I came along a few years later, at a time when the ashram was beginning to expand and put up new buildings. All these buildings were erected on the basis of plans that had been drawn up by Bhagavan. In those days, cement was not available, and we had to use a mortar made out of lime. I was very sensitive to the chemicals in this mixture. I was always getting allergic reactions to them. Every morning, I would wake up with pus oozing out of my eyes. I had to work outside in the heat all day, and my body felt like it was overheating even during the cool of the evenings. Bhagavan taught me how to prepare a special mixture made out of coconut oil, sesame oil, and castor oil. He told me that if I applied this mixture to my feet in the evening, it would take away this feeling of overheating. I tried it, and it worked very well. Up until then, I had found it hard to sleep at night on account of this feeling of heat that was always in my body. After I started applying this mixture, I always had a good night's sleep. At some point while I was serving Bhagavan, the ashram acquired the house in Tiruchuzi, where Bhagavan was born. Chinna Swami asked me to go there and do some construction work on the old house. He wanted to turn it into some kind of a temple. I didn't want to leave Bhagavan, so I told Chinna Swami, I have completed all my temple worshipping and my bathing in holy waters in my previous births. That's why I have come to Bhagavan now. I don't need these activities anymore. Chinna Swami didn't pursue this matter with me, and I never went to Tiruchuzi. I had enough punyas to come to Bhagavan and receive his grace, because I had done all these things in other lives. The charitable works, the good actions, the temple rituals, etc., that I had done in past lives earned me the right to come to Bhagavan's presence, to stay there and serve him. They had served their purpose, and I didn't need them anymore. All these ritual activities lost their appeal for me within a few days of encountering Bhagavan and his teachings. In Swamiji's book, I read that he liked to drink the water that had been left in Bhagavan's cup. This is some kind of ritual that he persisted with long after he came to Ramana ashram. Does Swamiji make a distinction between ordinary rituals and accepting leftovers from the guru? When I worked in the ashram, I used to drink the water with which Bhagavan had washed his hands. I would get this water 2 or 3 times a day. Even after I moved to Palatkotu, I still occasionally drank this water because Muraliyarpati sometimes used to bring it to me. She knew that I liked this water, and she knew that I had been accustomed to drinking it. Sudaram translating. I once asked Swamiji why he was so attached to drinking this water. He said that it was on account of a story he had read when he was still living in his village. The story was about a sage called Patinatar, who lived with his disciple, Badargiriyar, in a village called Tiruvide Marudur. Swami continuing the story. Every day these two used to give their leftover food to a dog. Some time later this dog died and took birth as a princess in the household of the king of Benares. When she grew up, the king wanted to arrange her marriage, but she refused, saying that instead of marrying, She wanted to see a sage called Patitanathar, who lived in Tiruvidemarudur. Seeing how determined she was, the king himself agreed to take her to see this man. As soon as she arrived there, Patitanathar recognized her and told his disciple that in her previous life she had been the dog that had been given their leftover food. Then Patitanathar added, "She will become enlightened because she ate that food." The disciple found this whole story hard to believe. "How can a dog take birth as a human being?" he asked. "And how can she get enlightened merely on account of having eaten this food?" Patitanathar answered, "I will show you," and then proceeded to walk to a nearby Shiva temple. The princess and the disciple followed. As they stood together inside the temple, Shiva appeared in front of them in the form of light. The light engulfed both the disciple and the princess and absorbed them into itself. Patitanathar was left standing alone. He asked Shiva, "I am all alone in this world now. Please tell me how I can also merge with you." Shiva replied, "Take this bitter-tasting sugar cane with you and visit my temples. Each time you visit a temple, taste the sugar cane. If it tastes very sweet there in that temple, you will attain samadhi and become one with me." Patitanathar followed these instructions and visited many temples, but during this period, which lasted many years, each time he tasted the sugar cane in these places, it always tasted bitter. Finally, he arrived at Tiruvantiyar, a small town near Madras. He bit into the sugar cane, and in the moment that its sweet taste touched his tongue, he attained Mahasamadhi and physically disappeared. It was the memory of this story that made me want to drink Bhagavan's leftover water. In the 1930s, while I was still serving Bhagavan in the ashram, I developed a severe stomachache. One of Bhagavan's doctor devotees decided to take me to Madras for a checkup. I was examined there, but the cause of the stomachache was not found. As I was about to return to the ashram, I remembered the story of Patitanathar and decided to visit the temple at Tiruvantiyar on my way home. I had heard from other people that when Patitanathar dematerialized in that temple, he left a Shiva lingam behind. When I went to pay homage to him in his Samadhi temple, I saw that this lingam was still there. During deep meditation, peace is there all the time, but there is still a feeling that peace is something that can come and go. I know that this is just an idea, but I want to eliminate this idea and have the direct experience of the peace that never comes and goes. Bhagavan says, "You're always the self. It is just your notion that you are not the self that has to be got rid of." How does this happen? The self is peace and happiness. Realizing peace and happiness within you is the true realization of the self. You cannot distinguish between peace, happiness, and the self. They are not separate aspects. You have this idea that peace and happiness is within you, so you make some effort to find it there. But at the moment, it is still only an idea for you. So ask yourself, to whom does this idea come? Who has this idea? You must pursue this line if you want to have the idea replaced by the experience. Peace is not an idea, nor is it something that comes and goes. We are always that. So remain as that. You have no birth and no death, no bondage and no freedom. It is perpetual peace, and it is free from all ideas. The I am the body idea is what is concealing it. This is what has to go. So the notion of being the body and the mind comes back and covers the experience? Yes, this idea, I am the body, is not there during sleep. Everyone enjoys sleeping, and the reason we enjoy it is because there are no thoughts there. It is the thoughts that arise subsequently that cause us all our trouble. There is no separate entity during sleep because no thought has arisen to create the image of one. When waking comes, this first rising thought, I am the body, brings separation, doubts, and confusion. If you can be without it in the waking state, there will be the knowledge. I am Ramana. I am Arunachala. Everything is myself. Ram, Krishna, etc. are all you. It is just this limiting I am the body thought that keeps this knowledge, this awareness from you. In the waking state, the jnani has no limiting thoughts, no ego that identifies with a name and a form. His state is crystal clear. Ramana Bhagavan had no ego, no limiting thoughts, which is why he knew himself to be this peace, this happiness. How can we avoid getting attached to the form of the guru, to his personality, and to the place where the guru lives? If you completely avoid attachment to your body and mind, then all other attachments will vanish. Identify with that which is neither body nor mind, and all your attachments will go. You can only put your attention on one thing at a time. While it is on the mind or the body, it cannot be on the self. Conversely, if you put attention on the self and become absorbed in it, there will be no awareness of mind and body. Every night during sleep, you let go of your attachment to both the body and the mind, and the result is silence, peace, and an absence of duality. You can have this silence, this peace, and this absence of duality in the waking state by not believing the rising thoughts that create duality for you. Resist limiting thoughts. Replace them with thoughts such as, all is myself, everybody is myself, all animals, all things are myself. What you think you become. If you understand and experience that everything is yourself, how can you have dislikes and likes? If everything is you, there will be no desire to avoid anything, no impulse to discriminate in favor of anything. If you want to discriminate at all, avoid bad company and bad thoughts. At night, when you suddenly start to experience the cold, you pull a blanket over yourself. Pull the blanket of discrimination over yourself. When you feel that there is a possibility of bad company and bad thoughts dragging you down. You may need to do this, but the jnani will not, because nothing can drag him back into the realm of false identifications again. He will always be in that state in which he knows everything to be himself. He will never again have the idea that anything is different or apart from his own self.